Open the pod bay doors, Hal. That's a quote from 2001, A Space Odyssey, an iconic film from 1968 exploring the relationship between humans and artificial intelligence. So, what exactly is AI? Is it being used for good, for evil, or somewhere in between? In this episode, I'm calling AI our frenemy forever. I sit down with an expert to find out where we're at in 2025. AI is embedding into our lives whether we like it or not. And unless you're planning on going and living in the desert, in the forest, wherever, and abandoning your cell phone, it is here. And why not understand the enormous implications of artificial intelligence? That is where we should start. And who better than with Jack Uldrich? He is a leading futurist. He's an author, and you know all the kind of stuff about technology and AI, and that's why you're here today. Thanks for being here on the pod.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I first heard of artificial intelligence 20 years ago. I mean, in futurist circles, there's an individual by the name of Ray Kurzweil who had been talking about it and actually projecting where all of this was headed. And even back in the year 2000, he said around 2026 is when things are really going to take off. And he was absolutely prescient in that. Like you, I was very young when I watched Space Odyssey, and I haven't rewatched it since, but I am going to go back and rewatch it. But AI really has been around for about 50 years. But then it went through a period where people just thought it wasn't going to work. And then it really began being rekindled about 20 years ago. And only in the last 5 years has it really picked up. And then, of course, with November 30th, 2022, that's when ChatGPT was sort of unleashed upon the world. That's when things really picked up, and they have not slowed down. In fact, they're only going to continue to accelerate.
That's right. Now, I know that you commented, I don't know if it's a newsletter, on two AI leaders recently, and you felt that they missed the mark when they were talking about how society will be impacted by AI because they missed the political impact, and that's going to be a big part of what happens in the next 5 years because we're in unstable times.
No, that's right. So the two leaders I referred to, one is Sam Altman. He is the CEO of OpenAI. The other one is Dario Amandio. He is the CEO of a company called Anthropic. And both of them make this dangerous assumption that we will continue to be living in relatively stable democracies, and also that capitalism will be sort of the economic system of choice. And I don't think that you can make either of those assumptions, particularly because AI, one of its first uses, will be by people in political power. And it doesn't matter where on the spectrum, if you're the far right, the far left, people who are in power are going to try and figure out how to leverage this technology to stay in power. And that's why I think that at least our assumptions around democracy really have to be checked, and we have to be having a much deeper, more serious conversation about what this technology actually means to our political structures.
It will have a way of seducing us in thinking that what our thoughts are our own. Eventually, when artificial superintelligence, ASI, will be taking over essentially. And from what I'm reading, this could be in 5 years that we would have, in time, essentially, artificial intelligence out there making the decisions. And I mean, we truly are kind of offloading our own thoughts when you think about it.
That's right. And so I think what people need to understand is, and I'm just going to use social media as a way to help you understand this. When Facebook came out a decade ago, they said after 50 likes, after you press the like button, Facebook knew you better than your best friend knows you. After 100 likes, it knows you better than your spouse knows you. After 300, it knows you better than yourself because it knows your biases. It knows what you don't know or what you think you know. But now, with artificial intelligence, that is, in fact, AI is going to know you as well, if not better than yourself. And so the opportunity for manipulation is a real danger and one that we have to take really seriously. And then just for your audience, ASI, artificial superintelligence, is this idea that AI is going to be smarter than humans. And so, as you said, that's what most people, at least experts in the field, feel as though we might be 3 to 5 years away. And so we can unpack that aspect a little later, but it's something that we have to really be thinking about. We are creating something in which we have no idea how it will unfold. And I think that ASI is actually better thought of as alien intelligence, because we're creating something that is going to think differently than us. And it might be able to think some wonderful things and solve some extraordinary problems, climate change, health, disease, other things like that. But then it could go in a different direction. And we have to begin thinking longer and harder and more seriously about this.
Well, a lot of people are thinking about it. And by the way, we have opened up the phone lines on Life Unscripted, and the number is 612-810-0805. And we are going to start now with our first caller who has a question. I guess he's been going down the rabbit hole.
Hi, Alex. This is Ron. What is, or who can be, a source of truth in information when asking about this? Because it seems like the goalposts move in the answers depending on how frequently you ask them of AI. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so he's wondering, if you are asking a question to AI, how do you know, truly, if it's legitimate?
The short answer is you don't. And this is the first thing we have to train people to understand, is that artificial intelligence still has biases. It has what's called hallucinations, which are really it's simply lying. It's making up things that aren't true. Now, having said that, artificial intelligence, if you've used ChatGPT or many of the other platforms, you understand that it does a remarkably good job at taking information from the internet, putting it together, and for the most part, it is true. But we don't know if that remaining part is 5 or 10%. And so what I would encourage people to do is we have to hone our critical thinking skills. And so when you ask artificial intelligence a question, you have to ask it a couple of different times and from different perspectives and see if it gives you different information. But then you also have to run it against what you already know, as well as sort of the old-fashioned internet searches where you're still looking up the information. But I think that we are quickly falling into a position where we simply accept it as the truth, and that is an assumption you absolutely can't make. So I would say the first thing all of us have to do is just get better at constantly asking it different, deeper, more probing questions, because I think that's how we can begin to at least ascertain what's true and what might not be true.
When we're talking about this political unrest that is happening right now. And some of that could be because we know that artificial intelligence is going to be taking away many jobs. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, 20% of white-collar jobs. And that is worldwide. And you can see where that things can spiral downward, especially when people are basically without work. And it, as you said, we are all open to some kind of coercion, and that's not good.
It is not, and I would say that this idea of job loss is one that what I really don't like about the AI leaders is, for the most part, they say, oh, AI isn't going to take anyone's job. It's just going to change the nature of their job. And that, from my perspective, is patently untrue, that there are going to be a number of jobs that are lost. I think we're already seeing it with coders. I think if you follow the advances in self-driving and autonomous cars, which is enabled by artificial intelligence, the number of Lyft and Uber drivers is going to be adversely affected. Truck driving is the most common job in North America, and right now they're having a hard time finding truck drivers, and so the companies are actually moving towards self-driving trucks, which in a few years is going to put more truck drivers out of work. But it's not just these blue-collar jobs. It is white-collar jobs. I think that a lot of the marketing industry is under great stress right now, and they understand their entire industry is shifting under them. And so I think the number of people employed in marketing is going to be adversely affected. The legal profession, a lot of what paralegals do and young attorneys do is a lot of discovery work. Now, AI can't do the more sophisticated legal work yet, but it can certainly do some of the discovery work. And so suddenly maybe the number of lawyers we need, radiologists, oncologists, bankers, financial advisors.
There will be, for sure, we're talking about the concerns and for instance, how do you regulate this? Because that is going to be so important. And you saw, for instance, you mentioned Waymo, how in Los Angeles, how that was used basically for political unrest, as someone got in there and ordered Waymo cars, and that's truly a concern. So I'm wondering in this age that we're in, we're kind of on the precipice. I mean, we're here. We know that we're going to be losing the jobs, and really the best thing would be for us to utilize AI to our advantage, where maybe we're able to, it'll take care of tasks that might be tedious and spend more time doing what we love, what we enjoy. But I've got to believe that is a huge concern. And, I know we're focusing, or I am, on the negative because, when I first heard about it, I'm nervous about it. I really am. How it's going to affect, the youth and on and on. But medical technology, as you mentioned, that is an area when like, for instance, preventing diseases and just learning so much more about it. That's probably an area that will be mostly positive, I would think.
I think what we have to do is we do have to recognize the positive potential in all of this while being realistic about the dangers and just say it is some of both. It's going to have amazing positive capabilities. And let me just give you a couple of examples. First, let's just start with education. This idea of using artificial intelligence in a classroom might sound horrific to many people, like, oh my gosh, no, we want teachers teaching our children. And I generally agree with that. But if AI can sort of tailor a message to your specific child, because your child might learn in a unique way, we might be able to teach certain classes. And they're doing this down in Austin, Texas, helping students learn math, for example, quicker. But then what that is enabling the schools to do is they have more time for the kids for recess, to play outside, to learn how to build things with their hands, things that are still uniquely human. So I think, to me, that's the metaphor. Like, we have to leverage AI to do what it does well, and then how does it give us more time to be more human? So I like that. And I think in the same way, healthcare, I think that no one would disagree if AI can diagnose Alzheimer's or cancer years in advance and allow us to get preventive treatment. That is an extraordinary thing, and we have to leverage that while at the same time recognizing that is going to result in some doctors, some healthcare professionals needing to rethink and revisit how their profession operates, that we have to try and capture the positive aspects and then be realistic about the negative, and then with the negative to say, how do we help those people who have been adversely affected, retrained, find different meaning, purpose in their lives? But this is going to be no easy challenge.
No, not at all. It's not. One area is our climate and how, the growth of computers and systems may have an effect. And I know our next caller is a little bit concerned about how artificial intelligence will perhaps change in what way. So let's take our second caller.
Hi, my question is about AI's effect on the environment. I've heard that the power required to train AI models can demand a lot of electricity, which can lead to increased carbon dioxide emissions and puts pressure on the electric grid. And I've also just heard about the fact that we would need a lot of water to cool down the hardware. So I guess my question is, what plans are in place to address the environmental impact of AI? Thanks, Alix.
So really valid concerns.
Absolutely. It's a pressing concern. And I would say in the short term, AI's energy consumption is something that the industry is aware of. They are working feverishly to try and bring it down, but it has an extraordinary environmental footprint. Every time you just do a query on ChatGPT, it uses the equivalent amount of energy just to answer your one simple question as what it would take if your iPhone was 0 to charge it up to 100%. And so just imagine billions of people all across the planet every day asking these things. So it's using this extraordinary amount of energy and water as well. So in the short term, huge issue. And all of the data centers that are being now built to sort of meet the energy, or first to meet the needs of AI, but then they have a huge energy footprint. So what the industry is doing is they're trying to figure out how to develop both new hardware and software to radically lower the footprint. And I think they will be successful in that. But I just think we're going to go from billions of inquiries a day to hundreds of billions. And so even though each one will be using less energy, we're still going to be using a lot of it. So I would say what we're going to see, and we're already seeing it, is in order to meet this demand, nuclear power is going to be part of the solution. I'm no big fan of nuclear power because of its waste, but its carbon footprint is very low. And longer term, I think there are going to be some really innovative energy solutions. We're going to get quite serious about nuclear fusion. And artificial intelligence can actually facilitate the advance. And so I think we also have to be realistic in saying AI can actually help us lower our carbon footprint in a lot of ways. It can teach us how to be more energy efficient, or it might get us to some of these cleaner, more renewable sources of energy a lot faster. So in that aspect, there's some positive aspects.
I think people hear the word nuclear and freak out a little bit, as we know it's a concern worldwide that it could be used for bad, for certain. Now, I've been researching this AI for a while now, and there is a company, NVIDIA, and it has created this climate in a bottle. And this is where we know weather forecasting would typically take about 8 hours. Now it's down to 3 minutes, or it will be. And this is a way where AI is going to be affecting farmers, for instance, and insurance. Tell me, I know you've talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, and so here's where we just have to embrace the ambiguity of artificial intelligence. What it's going to do in terms of weather is it is absolutely going to help farmers understand what the weather is going to be like 6 months in advance, with a certain range of probability. A week out, it's going to be even better. And then within 24 hours, it's going to be really good. And so one way to think about this is just last year, weather forecasting was good enough to give a farmer 15 minutes advance warning of a tornado. This year, because of AI, an hour. And those extra 45 minutes help you get your laborers off the field, your equipment, your animals to safety. So that is wonderful. The downside for farmers is all of this AI, who has access to it? Well, Wall Street has access to it, and they're going to use that information to figure out if the price of corn is going to go down or up, and they're going to make their hedging strategies, which are going to work to the disadvantage of farmers. So here again, AI has this good aspect and this bad aspect, and we have to just hold both in our heads and in our hearts at the same time.
Agreed. Okay, we're going to take another caller, and she has some concerns about facial technology.
Hi, I have a question. My name's Rachel. I am really concerned about all the facial recognition software out there between my phone, sometimes venues you go to have it, and having my face recognized, and then people using that for their own, being able to access my credit cards or anything else by facial recognition. How would you propose to help that situation?
It's a really good question. I don't have a satisfactory answer.
I mean, we've been using our fingerprints for a while now, but this is the next level.
We have. And I just want to go back to your earlier question about how AI might be used in the political environment. I'm not sure if you saw this. It was just a month ago in Hungary, whose leader is an autocrat. They passed legislation banning pride events. But in the legislation, they also authorized the use of facial recognition technology so that if people were going out and marching on behalf of rights for gays and lesbians, that they would be able to use facial recognition technology to penalize those people. And so I think here is how artificial intelligence will be used by autocrats, and it will be facial recognition technology in combination with AI that allows them to control the public. So her fears are absolutely legitimate. And the reason I say I don't have a satisfactory answer is I fear that most of the public prefers convenience to really safeguarding their privacy and security. I mean, if you could whip through the airport without having to go through TSA, because you're like, hey, I'm an honest person. Like, that makes my life simpler. But then understanding how that facial recognition could actually be turned against us is actually what we need to be thinking about. So her question is spot on. I just don't have a satisfactory answer as to how we, unless there's a society-wide agreement to say we are going to let go of some of the conveniences because we so value our privacy and security. That's what we have to do.
Therein lies the problem. Societal agreement. As we know, that is not an easy thing right now. And the aspect of making things easy. Now, let's say, for instance, we're at a stage now where we go buy something. It's like put in your email, put in your phone number. At some point, like entering a place, you will have to go through facial recognition, and you have a choice of, well, you don't either come in or, you're out. And that's, I guess, that point in which society has to go, okay, hang on. There still needs to be a point in which people can decide not to take part. But part of me just doesn't see that happening. How can someone out there who's like, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want my likeness out there. I'm out. But you can't really partake in much of anything, whether it's shopping or it's going to a sports event or truly just being out there in the world without being recognized. And there are cameras everywhere.
Mm-hmm. The genie's already out of the bottle, right, in this sense. And so I think the decision has already been made, and society hasn't necessarily agreed to it, but I don't see how we pull back from that. Again, I'm just using your examples of the sporting events. I just went to a Loons game recently, just whipped through, and that was great. But there was that, and I did not sign up or agree to that. I'm just like, yeah, I could not go to the game, but how does that help solve anything? And so I think what we have to do is simply recognize that the cat is out of the bag, and now how do we make the best of a bad situation?
There are a number of companies, and one of them, I'm sure there'll be many, who will be creating digital doppelgangers. And within 5 years for sure, they will be able to work in real time. So you can go in there and you can decide, I want to have an avatar of myself. Or I guess you can buy one off the shelf if you like that one better. At least that's where we're at right now. But this will be normal at some point down the road where, there will be our AI life and there will be our real life. It sounds ridiculous and crazy, but truly, this is where we're headed. And it's hard to wrap your head around the idea that you'll have an image that I suppose you'll also like. Who owns that image? Mm-hmm. Copywriting your own likeness is going to be really important.
Oh, that's right. This idea of the digital doppelgangers is that, I mean, there's already enough footage of you from your days on Fox and other that, and
It can create one.
It can create one. And just to help people understand how close this is, they're saying in 2026 there are going to be virtual employees, which are already sort of the early versions of these digital entities who are capable of performing not all tasks, but many tasks. So we're already there. But I think where we're going to go is that we are going to be able to create a digital twin of ourselves that will be able to do a lot of different things. But I think this is really going to mess with people, is that we're going to have a hard time discerning, well, was that the real Alix or was that the digital Alix? Especially if I'm just communicating on Zoom or something with it. But then it also goes to a deeper question of what it means to be human. That digital doppelganger is going to survive after you and I live. And so in one aspect, it might be really, really cool that your great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter could understand who you were and have a conversation with you. But now on another aspect, once you're gone, like, is that the real you? How much of that this is where it gets into these deep philosophical questions. And I think the majority of people will simply just go on and not think about it. But for many people, it will be very disorienting. And I don't know how it's going to shake out.
So I heard something from a recent podcast where it was a criminal trial and someone had been murdered. And the sister of the person who had been murdered, when the sentencing came around, she really wanted her brother to be represented. And, oftentimes when, the jury comes back together, the verdict has been made, they want to, talk a little bit about the person who is no longer there. And she said, okay, what would be the best way to bring my brother back essentially to life for the jurors to know who he was? They allowed this. They allowed her to create, probably the earliest versions of her brother artificially addressing the jurors.
Wow. I had
Isn't that wild?
That is wild. And it's one of the, this is where we have to embrace the ambiguity. In some sense, it helps the jury understand that the victim was at one point a real person and had thoughts and feelings and emotions, and it might give them some deeper understanding. But at the same time, of course, it's not them.
Yeah, a whole new world.
So this is, I heard one writer, and I think she is right, is that we're going to need deeper thinkers. We're going to need new philosophers to help us navigate. We are entering a world in which we are not prepared to think about. We don't have the skills, and I think you see it in our struggle right now. What does this mean? How do we handle it? How do we think about it? But at the same time, we can't step away from the challenge. And I do want to say this, is that I think the hidden opportunity within artificial intelligence is it may give us the opportunity to become more human. I think one of the interesting sort of fallouts of artificial intelligence might be suddenly if we're having a world where they're digital twins of ourselves and people can make videos of politicians saying things they never said, we're not going to be able to trust our eyes or our ears. But what are we going to trust? We need trust to survive. So I think that this human face-to-face communication is actually going to become more popular. And in many cases, we're going to go back to the old way of doing things. Now, I don't think we'll go back to Rotary clubs and bowling alleys, but there will be the new future equivalent of people getting together in small groups of people who they know and trust. And that might be a really cool future. And so I think I don't want to leave people thinking it's all doom and gloom. I think we have to be realistic. Like, this is going to be hard to navigate. This is our generational responsibility to help navigate this.
Regulating.
But understand there might be some really cool, beautiful stuff to come out of it.
I'm really glad that you have an optimistic attitude because as I went down the rabbit hole of all the information, I mean, there will be plenty of scientific breakthroughs and perhaps once the ASI, the superintelligence takes over, that will be the very last thing that humans create because from that point on, the computers are creating and inventing things. So we'll go to one more caller, and this one is, I guess he has a question kind of about something work-life balance. His name is Charlie.
Hi, Alex. My question on artificial intelligence is how this may improve work-life balance in the future. Thanks.
There you go. I just asked his
Okay.
question.
So Charlie raised a good point, and I think one of the, again, getting back to the positive aspects of this, I think in the short term, like the job displacement, we have to be real about. Like certain jobs are going to go away. But now one of the ways society might deal with it is a shorter work week. Go to 4-day work week, maybe even a 3-day work week. And so suddenly
People are going, hooray!
Suddenly this question of work-life balance might really tilt in favor of our life and not work.
We get paid, though. People are like, but how am I going to get paid? I mean, our company is really going to kind of cough up more money for perhaps fewer hours of work.
So this is where I think this is where we will see innovations coming from the political sphere. And a few years ago, many of your listeners might have heard of the universal basic income. But it was this early idea started by AI founders like, hey, there's going to be a lot of job displacement coming. We're going to need some sort of new societal contractual obligations. And this idea is people are being retrained to actually pay them to go back to school or to make sure that every citizen at least has a basic amount of money to meet their basic needs. Now, to many people, that smacks and reeks of socialism, and I'll be the first to admit there are certain elements of that. But if we're going to go through as turbulent a societal change as I think we are, we're going to need to think about structures like that. Or what is an alternative? If you are opposed to universal basic income, what do you suggest? How do we navigate and help tens of millions of people who played by the rule? They went to college, they went to grad school, they went to law school, they went to med school, and now they're out of a job. Like, is that fair? Do we just say, tough, you should have known better? Or do we say, no, we have some obligation to help them get back on their feet and think
maybe that will
about doing new things?
With so many people who've lost their jobs, it may take a point in which so many people will be out of work, they finally might understand, okay, I thought that wouldn't be me. I didn't think I would lose my job. They're saying, okay, my white-collar job is gone. But, whoops, I guess,
No, I think this is where the political equation is going to change. I mean, it's one thing, and I'm just going to use this as a stereotype. If you're a wealthy white-collar worker who leans, towards tax cuts and sort of laissez-faire, to suddenly be on the other side of the laissez-faire and you've lost your job, you might change your political thinking. And that will have implications on the political sphere. I think the recent primary election of the young fellow in New York City, who's a Democratic Socialist, or a member of that party, so very, very progressive, is a harbinger of things maybe to come. I think he recognizes there's going to be societal changes. We're going to need some new agreements. We're certainly going to need new thinking. And I'm not saying I'm for or against his thinking right now. I just think we're going to see a lot of innovation in the political sphere. And it's really exciting. It's going to be scary to a lot of people. But I do think that we are going to navigate this. And here's where, as a futurist, it might surprise you to know, I spend a lot of time studying history. And so we have gone through periods of major societal change. I mean, our great-grandparents with the Industrial Revolution were probably the last ones to really experience. But in a short period of time, we went from half of the population living and working on farms to only 2% working. And so just imagine 100 years ago, if I was a futurist, I would have been saying to all farmers, like, most of you are going to be out of work. Their immediate thought would have been, oh my God, this is awful. This is going to be horrific. And not for a moment do I mean to suggest that that transition was easy, but we did navigate it. And in the same way, there are going to be jobs that are lost.
You had to go through the depression, it seems like.
Yeah.
That's really...
And it's easy to see the jobs that were lost. It's far more difficult to envision those jobs and industries that don't yet exist. But here's where I think that human ingenuity and human creativity, there's no shortage of problems in the world. So as long as there's no shortage of problems, there should be jobs and opportunities for us to do stuff. And so, again, I'm just going to... It'd be hard to be a futurist and not be optimistic, but I really am putting my money on human ingenuity and creativity to figure out how we navigate this to actually create a better world for ourselves with more work-life balance, with cleaner energy, where we're actually addressing disease earlier, and that we can survive healthily with a lot less than we actually think we need. I think one of the opportunities of AI is we might move towards material abundance. And what that means is that most people will have their food, shelter, safety, transportation needs met, and they won't need as much financial security as they think they need. But then this will beg the problem of, once we have those needs meet our material, this question of what it means to be human and our spiritual needs will, I think, rise to the fore. So I actually, in many ways, envision sort of a spiritual revolution coming, because people are going to have more time to think about what it means to be human and what we should be doing. And what that will look like, I have no idea, but I think it's coming, and it could be really cool and beautiful.
Thanks for leaving it on an up note, Jack. I know I'm looking forward to my future doppelganger is being taller. So that's, what
I'm looking forward to mine having a little more hair.
Thank you, Jack. Great to have you on the pod.
Thanks, Alix.